Welcome, everyone. My name is Cheryl Moss, and I own and curate for Mouse Gallery, which put on this wonderful photography show. There's 24 artists from the area that are featured. Well, 23, 24 is me. I'm pleased to welcome Cheryl Barill here to do a little Secrets of the Studio with us for the photography edition.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Not my first time here doing this talk. And I actually just came back from Virginia, where I accidentally did the talk in the Chrysler Museum in front of some artwork that I was doing a personal video of, and people overheard me in my own video and started asking questions. So it was very interesting. It was Mark Rothko, and I was simply standing in front of it with my cell phone, and I started up very close, and I started walking back. I began in that section of the gallery was empty, and I started talking about how Mark Rothko had a specific thing in mind for each one of his paintings, and that there's a perfect viewing distance for each one of these paintings to turn it into an experience where you are responding to the power of the color. And so as I did this little video, I was backing up. I said, oh, I think this is the sweet spot. I'm going to take one more step back. Oh, yeah, that was the sweet spot. And I walked forward, and I took like one more step. I went back and forth a couple times, and I confirmed to myself, yes, this is the sweet spot. Then I finished the video, and then the person behind me said, what do you mean the sweet spot? So I started talking about Mark Rothko, and the reaction that I got from what began as 5 people was like, oh wow, I never knew that. So that's the concept of this whole talk. And there are points about this that are important for artists to understand, that we have an opportunity to fill a very large gap by filling in just some basic pieces of information that we should never take for granted that other people know. Because if they are not an artist, even if they have a family member who is an artist, they still don't know what the creative process is. So I'll throw in a disclaimer, I'm not a photographer. So when you ask me, can I come do this talk for, a photography show, I had no hesitation, because the creative process is still always the creative process. So those of you who are in the show, I'm going to pull on you to demonstrate through me asking you questions, how you share something about your creative process. So not only will you be sharing your creative process with me, but you'll be modeling how to have conversations with other people who are clueless about what you do. And therefore, most of the time they'll walk and they'll be like, I like that one, I don't like that. They walk through and they don't even understand the experience that they're not aware of. So that's that gap that I talk about, that we as artists can help fill. The talk originated, I'm also a hairdresser in addition to being a painter. I use oil paints, I use a lot of metal leafing in my work as well. And it started out, my clients were like, because they're in my studio, and they're like, your work's not my thing. Yeah. So I would say to them, that's okay. Now, they don't even know that that is okay. Like, your thing is not my thing. In today's world, okay, that's all right. And then they would come back 4 weeks later with a color. And they would say oh, you had that up before. I'm like, yeah, it's a large painting. And it's a process painting. It takes many, many layers. No, it's very different. And they began to ask me questions. Started with, so how much does a tube of paint cost? Right? Oh, well, let me show you. It's like this tube of paint right over here. This is 37 milliliters, and this one cost me $47 on sale. Oh my God, you must use every drop. No, most of it gets scraped off. And there begins the conversation. Really? Why? So then it's like, and this tube of paint, oh, that, like, how often do you pay 47? Well, this one's $12. It's titanium white. It's cheap. In fact, it's pretty cheap. It's $22, whatever. So now they begin to understand some super simple basics that, because it's not part of their world, why would they even give it a thought, right? So now I have them asking questions and understanding and looking at the work that's on my easel. I have 2 easels in my studio, and then there's whatever else all around. And they begin to ask questions, and I begin to answer their questions. And I help them get past that, like, oh, I don't know anything about that, so I don't want to embarrass myself and ask something stupid. Or, I'm afraid of insulting the artist. I'm uncomfortable, So just by engaging and offering little bits of information. So you're one of the photographers, yes?
Mm-hmm.
What is your name?
I'm Katie.
Katie, hi. Do you mind if I start with you?
Sure.
Okay. What are some of your materials?
Yeah, I mostly use 35 millimeter color film. And a lot of the time, like the middle piece over here,
Right in the middle.
The middle one, the color one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of the time, my process involves submerging the film in different liquids before development.
Oh wow. And how many different liquids?
So I try different combinations all the time to see how it affects the end result.
Wow. How did you come onto that? That sounds interesting. Is that unique to you, or do like a ton of photographers do that?
There's more photographers than people realize because I have so many online communities and came across this technique and thought, well, that's cool, but like I'm kind of scared. Everyone's kind of scared to mess up their roll of film.
There you go. Okay, so you're not working with digital, so it's not like you're shooting off a gazillion. So I do know a little bit about film. It's like you have only so many shots per film, or per roll of film. So if you're playing with it, like, how does your fear get in your way of creating?
I would say I was scared to try it, but then once I did try it, the first result was very subtle and I wanted more. So it's actually gotten to the point where I have mostly destroyed the images, but now I have a better idea of how to dial it back a little bit to get, that's sort of my ideal right there.
Very cool. So if you destroy it, then it's like totally gone, or does it give you another idea?
Yeah,
actually, something different?
Now that you say that, I have some where I can't see the images at all, but now my wheels are kind of turning like, well, that's a cool texture. What could I do over top?
Oh. Okay, see, so like, I literally just learned something. And it ends up being more fun talking about it versus, I stood there and there was a sunset, and you're like, I want people to feel what I'm feeling.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That ends up being a conversation that as artists, we end up going to, and I can pretty much guess that anyone who's in here who is interested about art, but they're not an artist, that once an artist goes to that answer, like, oh, I just want everyone to understand what I was feeling, they don't know where to take the conversation after that. It's like, right? So you did not raise your hand about being a photographer in the show. Are you a photographer?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm an artist.
You're an artist. What did you think about what she, Katie? I'm terrible with names.
It's okay.
And I think I've seen you before, but
I follow the article around,
nice.
and I frequent this.
Okay.
I didn't quite get into her. I dozed off a little bit. I missed some of what she said.
Oh, okay. Was there anything that kind of piqued your interest that you'd like her to repeat?
Sure.
Which part?
You can start from there.
So did anybody else like kind of like miss the information that Katie was sharing? Or you know, like, do you have any, did it bring up any questions?
I have one for Kate. Can you kind of walk through the process with 35mm film? Because there's, might be some people that are more familiar with digital than processing film. I even have a background in black and white film, but I don't know the processing for color.
Okay, so to be upfront, I don't actually do the development part for color. But with the film souping, there's two different ways I've tried it. You can submerge it before you even put it in your camera, but you just have to let it dry first. But I usually take the photo, then submerge the film.
Okay, wait, slow down. So the film goes in this little canister. You dump the whole canister?
Yes,
Okay, so it's not like you pull it out
Right.
and you find some way to rewind it? You're not in a dark room doing
Correct.
that? Okay.
yep, I'm dunking the whole canister.
And what kind of chemicals?
So I've tried all different things. It's usually like this one was boiled in beer.
Oh, you're kidding, beer, like beer?
Yeah.
And it brings out the color?
So it's basically destroying the film emulsion, and so you're getting these colors that weren't supposed to show up.
Oh,
That's cool.
Yeah.
huh,
Which goes in nicely with it being a beach theme, so it's like beer and beach.
Yeah.
Is that color negative film?
Yeah.
That's very cool. Now let me ask you, have you ever had this conversation with someone who's not a photographer?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I got those scans back from the lab while I was at work, and I like jumped out of my chair. I was so excited that it turned out the way I wanted. And I showed my manager, who's not a photographer or an artist, and her response was, "Oh, that's interesting. I would like to know what the photo looks like without all that." And I was just so disappointed because everyone knows what the beach looks like.
well,
But so that's an opportunity to help say to them, and it
Yeah.
helps us too. So like when I have this client of mine coming into my studio, but for her hair, and she's like, your work's not my thing. Now that can hurt, or you can simply like really just go right to that spot. 'Cause my first goal is anyone who's sitting in my chair for business, I want them comfortable. Last thing I want to do is have them uncomfortable coming into my space to have their hair done, right? Because a lot of these people have never actually been in a creative space. So right off the bat, they're going to be uncomfortable. So the person you showed the photo to, they responded basically a different version of, well, it's not really my thing, right?
Mhm.
So imagine how they would feel if you would say, well, that's okay, it's not everybody's thing.
Yeah.
well, maybe.
But I really appreciate that you let me show you. Now you've changed the feeling sense between the two of you, and you can continue the engagement or just have an easy letting go of it.
Mhm.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, maybe she just wanted to compare, like the before and after, and it maybe would help her understanding about the changes that happen when you mix beer in your work.
Ah.
Could be an interest, maybe she's interested in the process more.
So that leads me to like, oh, how can you expand on that idea, right?
Mhm.
So like, if you go to the beach with two cameras, one with the film that you dumped in the pier or whatever chemical, and one that is just normal or like untreated. And you take two pictures of the same scene, and you can show them side by side sometimes. It might be interesting.
I actually had that thought before. What if I had a film soup print and then a regular print and frame them together?
Yeah, so another response to this person who's saying like, oh, I'd like to see what it looks like without all those colors. You could say, you know, that could actually be a really interesting thing that I could bring to some of my displays. Thank you. I'm into my thing, don't realize like there's a way to kind of play with that. Now you've built another level, including your comfort, which increases their comfort. The next time you tell them, no, I have a reception where I have some work, would you like to come?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So that's part of my idea about us learning how to share more of the creative process. We don't have a cultural arts program doing that for us, doing the public outreach. So filling in that gap for the, so like it would be wonderful to help more people be more comfortable around the arts. So they would be more openly curious and perhaps come to more events, which would benefit everybody.
Right.
Because we create for what? There's a lot of fulfillment in that. All right, who else wants to be on the receiving end of a question? Are you one of the photographers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my piece is the accumulation of rare limit.
Okay, I don't know anything about photography, so if you're gonna say a technical term.
Oh, that's the name of the photo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's the one where the tree is in front of the rock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, here's my introduction.
Sorry about
That's
that.
okay, that's okay. I don't, not to put you on the spot, but just to kind of catch you up. I think you might have already got the feeling already. The whole talk here is to, because I'm not a photographer, so I cannot sit here and talk about my creative process in a photography studio, but you can.
Yeah.
So, we asked one question about process, one question about like what's the scariest part for you. I love bringing up the questions that open up our vulnerabilities, because when we open up our vulnerabilities to the non-artists, they're no longer napping, they become more interested. Even if they're really tired and they want to nap. All right, because you're still awake. You're still with us. And you're not with us, right? You're sitting differently. You're like, oh, what's going on here?
But you made it happen for me.
Right?
You did.
Awesome.
Seriously.
Thank you. That's the best compliment I could get.
And I mean it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Oh, you can't sit here and then at the end you walk away not knowing what was I doing sitting in there? Hey, what did I learn?
Yeah.
You don't want to feel that way.
So let me ask you, like, how many artists have, and we're gonna get back to you, so you don't know what I'm gonna ask you yet. Right? You don't know what I'm gonna ask you yet. Okay. You've been to a lot of artist talks, and you are an artist. When you go to an artist talk, are you typically interested, or are you just kind of there? Do you walk out of there satisfied that you've got something new?
Yeah, it's more walking out there, feel better. Yeah. When I go to an artist talk, yes, at the conclusion, I do walk out with something that I learned from there.
Okay.
One or two, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Always.
That's so, I agree with you. A lot of times artists are able to talk in a way that shares something of value, but I also still want to entertain. There's a lot more richness to the creative process that we can share. So, when I told you, you don't know what I'm going to ask you, did you feel a little vulnerable?
Yeah.
Did you get excited or a little scared?
I got excited.
Okay.
And a little bit scared. But yeah. I kind of, it got me thinking about what you might ask,
Okay.
and you know.
I love when artists talk really from the heart and share something about your creative process that excites you, but then also while you're in your creative process, what part is the hardest for you? Where's it get stuck?
So
What are your solutions you have to find?
I love doing experimentation, and that's really what I love doing. And I don't care. I use old digital cameras. I use phones. I use whatever. If it takes an image, I'll play around with it. But what I think the reason I do it now is just to kind of control my emotions in a way. You know, I've had a few things that have happened to me in the past couple of years, and that's what got me back into doing photography. And you know, when you're trying to process trauma and everything, I had a death in the family I was having to deal with. And you're trying to process the trauma, and you know, it gets tough because, you know, I don't tend to talk about these things too much to people. And, you know, I talk to my wife about these things, but you know, in a lot of cases, you don't want to like unload your trauma on people. You know, it's like, hey, I got something to tell you about me, and you're not going to be happy after I'm done. So, yeah, it's like, yeah, let me tell you how my life sucks. You know, but no. So, in order to help process and control those thoughts, when I'm behind the lens, that's what really shuts down all that stuff. It takes the noise out,
Yeah.
and then I can focus on things, and so that's kind of the entry into the creative process, and then allows me to kind of channel that energy into doing other things and doing some of the experimentation. I do a lot of film, and I've historically done film because I grew up with it. And I do all my own developing. That I used to do way back in the day on my own printing, but I don't have the room for that now. So you know, the hybrid process where I get the negatives and then I scan them in. But the one reason I like film, and I would say I probably prefer film to digital in some ways, is that delayed gratification. You know, you take digital, you know, you have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like, what the final product is going to look like right after you take the picture. And that's great. It allows you to make maybe a better shot. But there's something magical, at least that I feel, about like, ooh, you know, especially if you're like yesterday I was in Detroit and I was using this Kodak Pony camera, a piece of garbage camera, built in 1953, and
Those are popular again right now. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I just kind of found it at a flea market for like $1, and I'm like, yeah, let's see what I can get out of it. And so I started playing around with it, and I'm like, okay, well, the shutter on this thing isn't really quite working well, so I had to take it all apart and clean it up. And then I'm like, okay, well, I've invested this much time in it. Let's throw a few rolls of film in it and see what I can get out of it. And you know, I took it out in Detroit yesterday, and the whole time I'm like, well, if this camera works, maybe I'll get some real bangers. More likely, it's a real piece of crap, and you're not going to be in focus and stuff. But still, I love that. That just
So
like
is that like tension?
that tension, yes,
excitement,
yes,
the anticipation.
yes, and I live it. I love it. It really does something.
So like when you see do you do your own developing?
Yeah. So like.
So what's that like? Like, I mean, how do you develop your own work? So if you're standing with somebody in front of your work, and there's something about it that's you know, I don't know, would you be able to say, you know, like, let me share with you something in my developing process created that? Is there a link there to share with someone
Yeah.
who gets drawn to your work?
Yeah, well, in that case, that one was digital, and these just by chance, both these were shot at the Meyer Garden in Grand Rapids, and it turned out I repair lab equipment for a living, so I travel all over the state, and I got done early, and it was January, I think it was early February, and it was cold. It was I think it was like 15 degrees out, and I had my parka, nobody there, which I thought was great. I'm like, there's nobody here, I can do whatever the hell I want. And I had a lot of fun with it. But with that one, it just caught my eye. And in a lot of cases, sometimes I think there's something inside me that the conscious brain doesn't even see it. But I've kind of, through practice, just kind of learned like, hey, just do it, just shoot it, and maybe something deep down inside saw something that you didn't really even recognize when you took it.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interject a question. Once you've taken the photo, do you just leave it as it is, how it gets developed, or do you do some other things to manipulate it in the developing process?
Yeah, it depends on the photo.
Give me an example of one that you do.
Okay, so if it's something I want to just document, as me taking a picture of my kids, I have a small studio in the basement that I've set up. I try to keep that as much as, the way it was, the way I see it. I don't do a whole lot of manipulation. I might tune up the contrast, do noise things, but nothing that really distracts from the actual fundamental image. In the case of that one, that is not the case there. And so what I did there was just again messing around. And I'm like, in my opinion, those are that is a combination of two very boring shots. And I was like, well, these guys suck. So, but then I'm like, so what I did is I took the negatives and I'm like, let me just see what I can do. And I took them and I stacked them on top of one another. And then I scanned it in so it made it like a double exposure. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. That's way better than those photos individually.
So, do you mind if I poke around on you a little bit?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Now that's an impactful image. If I was, this is how I'm going to poke on you, and it's really, my intention is to help you get to this part of the conversation really fast. If you're sharing this information in an artist talk, right? Mentioned very quickly, I have all this equipment, I have a studio at home, sometimes I leave but I ask you about your creative process when you get vulnerable. So about this piece, let me tell you. And you focus in a more sharp way on your story about that part. Just land it right away. I had two photos that didn't look good. I felt kind of icky about it. Bring yourself into the story. I'm giving it my words, you give it yours. It's like, I had these two, they were both kind of meh, but then I got really curious. And the inventor in me is like, I wanted people to feel a mystery.
Yeah.
Or I wanted people to be curious when they look at this. I want people to experience the contrast. So now it's like I'm delivering information that nobody would know in a way that would wake somebody up, right? We have two really good measures here for how people are, and I hope you guys don't mind. Two really good measures for what kind of impact am I having on my audience? So if you're an artist giving an artist talk, to get to the stuff where you're talking most directly about yourself, you can bring up your trauma. Everybody identifies a trauma. You can bring up trauma, who in this room has not had something traumatic in their lives? Everybody has, right? If I ask for a show of hands, every hand would go up. So we all know trauma. Do we want to feel our trauma right now? No, I'm feeling really good right now. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel yours. But how it affects your work in your creative process, that makes an interesting story. Like, yeah, when I'm creating, I get away from all of that noise. People who don't create might not know that. That becomes really interesting. By show of hands, yes, no?
Oh,
I mean, more interesting.
that's why I do it.
So get to that point really quickly. Sure, and then, turn this into an instructional, like, how do you talk to people who are, like, maybe for a moment they pause in front of your work, and you catch that moment, and you're like, you want to make it more alive for them.
Yeah.
Not so they just on to the next. It's like, hey, would you like to hear something about the creative process of this piece? Because oh man, what I did with this started out with 2 really images, and I don't know, something inside me said, fidget with this. Or like, oh, I know what I can do. However you want to tell the story.
Yeah.
Because it's a stunning piece.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you want to tell the story in a way that brings that right to that moment right then.
Yeah.
Any of you been like with a realtor, you go house hunting, and you have a realtor who says, here's the living room, here's the kitchen, here's a closet, here's the bedroom, right? And you're like, out of this house, right? Next. I have a friend who's a realtor, and I said, like, what would you think would happen if you you're like, okay, which one between the 3 of you here cook? Who's going to be cooking? All right, do you cook? Oh, you cook. Okay, come here, let me show you the kitchen. Can you imagine, what's your favorite dish to cook? What do you love cooking?
Me,
Yeah.
turkey corn chili.
Okay, so what was it?
Turkey corn chili.
Turkey corn chili. So imagine this kitchen, you're standing in a kitchen, a house you're just looking at, considering buying it. If I said to you, like, hey, here's the kitchen, you're like, okay, right? And then, or if I walk you in and I say, what's your favorite thing to cook? Turkey corn chili. Oh wow, that sounds so good. Can you imagine, like, would this setup work for you? Can you imagine yourself in this kitchen, filling this kitchen with the smells and the flavors of your favorite dish? Right. So now you're emotionally hooked a little bit to that kitchen, unless the answer is no, I hate this kitchen. Right? So same thing with our artwork. We don't want to just say like, well, here's the sleeve. It was interesting the way the light hit it. Okay. So you 2 in the back there. Hi. I didn't catch if either of you are photographers. You're a photographer in the show. Okay, who's this sitting next to you?
This is Reese. I'm a friend.
A friend? Okay. Do you like her photography?
Yes, I do.
Okay, if she wasn't sitting here, would you like her photography? Do you have any of her photography in your home?
No.
Okay, so not to put any pressure on you, I'm going to use you now as a sample. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. So why not? If you like the work, where's the disconnect that nothing says, I have to have this in my home? And be honest. I mean, she's your friend, she's gonna love you. You guys are gonna leave there giggling, and she's gonna say, yeah, why don't you? Whatever. I hope I didn't start a fight. But you're helping us understand, like if somebody loves our work and they walk away from it, and they're not compelled to part with some of their money for it, I'm just gonna ask you to share like a little bit about that with us to see if there's a way we can learn how to bridge that gap.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I'm currently a junior in college and I don't have any money. So that is usually what stops me from purchasing artwork, especially anything like over $50, because I just like can't part with that kind of money right now.
Yeah.
And I love Courtney's work. I've seen it. She had a thesis recently at my college, and I got to see it, and it was beautiful. But in regards, I'm not a lesbian, That's also another reason where I feel like it's just not something that I would really want to have in my house, but her art is beautiful, you know, and I'm sure if there was something else that she made that was more along the lines of something that I personally resonated with, then I would buy it.
There you go. So it's a little bit, her topic is off theme for what you would want in your surroundings. Now, I'm not gonna say that this is something you should do. This is gonna be like, here's an option. Sometimes somebody will see a style of an artist's work and will say, I really love how you do all of that, but like, and Jamie, I'm gonna guess that's your work up there, the dragonfly, because I know your work, yeah? Okay, so I'm gonna just use this as an example. I got bit by a whole bunch of dragonflies on a hike in Montreal many years ago, so I don't want a dragonfly, but do you have any work or could, like, there's, like, I love frogs. Do you have any photos of frogs? Or the next time you go out, if you see frogs, would you, like, try to get, could you get, like, a really cool photo of a frog for me? I would love that, because I love your work, but I don't love this. Okay? So now, as
The frog wants the dragonfly too.
I want the dragonfly, but I don't want the dragonfly. I want the frog. So maybe get the frog like I am the dragonfly. But so like we as artists have an opportunity to say to someone like, all right, I know your works, I know what I'm doing is really not your thing, but I see that something about my work really seems to resonate for you. Is there a topic that would make you really want to own that piece, that I might have it in my inventory? I don't know, do photographers take commissions? Like someone says, hey, can you get me a really cool photo of a frog? And then you start talking with me about like a commission. Do photographers do that? Besides like weddings, which are like a commission, whatever.
Actually, that was taken at the request of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Department.
So that was a commission.
Okay, so that was a commission. There you go. Did you go out and get it, or did you happen to say like, oh, I have that in my inventory?
No, I went out and did it. I mean, they'll give me certain things that they want. Probably the biggest series was pollinators.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Bees and
I think we've
butterflies.
talked about
And
that before.
but they like the detail because most people don't get a chance to see the detail
The colors are really beautiful.
and the colors and things. I often associate our environment with our own humanistic activities and things. That's just a place to rest.
Mm.
But we have those moments that we need. But a lot of it is different. Actually, right from here, and it's in the car. One of my pictures is as a gift. I'm on my way to a graduation party.
Nice.
Lovely
So-
lady. She's
So I would tell you, like, if I were attending this show, as someone in the neighborhood who got curious and they decided to come because they heard it's a really cool space, right? Neighborly things, doing a stroll through, and something about that might catch my eye, and then if you were there seeing me looking at the work, the information about every bit of nature photography I take relates to human, however you said that was really lovely. And literally, I did not manufacture that response of, that was my genuine response. Like, I can relate to having a resting space more than having it as a gift in the car for someone else, which, if you're sharing something about your creative process, you want to stick to the creative process and the storytelling.
Well, we're just talking about the idea of that gift is because how it fits her. She's graduating from school. She's about to kind of go off. And what it is, it's actually a monarch butterfly before it ever flew.
Okay.
Right with the chrysalis hanging. They take several hours before they can kind of get their strength. So it's kind of tied to her graduating and
Nice.
taking off.
Symbolism.
But that's kind of some of the things I'm thinking about.
That's a lovely share, to talk about that connection to the artwork, to whoever it is looking for, and especially if you're giving it as a gift. So, by the way, I'm not inviting you to gift me a photo of a frog, but I'm genuinely not.
Well, I have some.
But I'm sure you do. So back to this, you have someone very close to you in your life who loves your artwork. Let's say she's a total stranger. You might be able to then say to her, I noticed that you're interested in something about my work. Are you interested? Is this something you'd be interested in collecting? And she might say, oh, it's off topic for me, but I love the way there's a sensitivity there, or I love the way you capture light. And you don't have anything that's different theme. You might say to her, well, thank you for sharing that with me. And just know, this is my theme and that's what I do, and that's okay. Or she's a super close friend and you can say, well, if I took a picture of something that was special for you, what might that be? And then it's a different thing, but it's a friend. But still, to consider, if you're talking to someone who you don't know and they like your work, but that's not their thing, it should be a decision how you engage with them or not. If you're only going to stay on topic like that, say, hey, I know another artist whose work is similar to mine. Would you like to be aware of that person? Because there's nothing wrong with artists supporting other artists. If you already know that person's not going to be a collector of yours, build a bridge for somebody else. Do you do photography of frogs?
I do not.
Do you know somebody, but you know someone who might be able to do it for you, right?
Now I do.
Now you do. For example, so when we learn that our work is not someone's thing, we have a tendency to do what? Feel hurt, end the conversation, withdraw, get away, right? And there's a really lovely opportunity to stay connected.
Tiana's.
Hi.
Hi.
My piece is at the very beginning. It's Smoking Clown, and it was taken at the Non-Rouge March on Cass. And I'm a street photographer, and it's something that always interested me in my entire life. Although I worked in a corporate environment for a good 40 years or so. And I'm getting back to my old teenage years where I was doing art. And
What about street photography speaks to you? Is it people or is it how you're portraying the people?
I think it's more people. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. It was not a lot happening. Everybody had the same houses. There was some ethnic diversity, but even racial. The black people lived on this side of the railroad tracks, and the Italians lived over here, and everything was pretty separate. But it was very, vanilla, my town. And I used to take the train down to Chicago, skip school, and take the Burlington Northern, go down to the city, go to the Art Institute, go into some of the neighborhoods that I probably shouldn't have as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid, but I just did. And I just found it really inspiring. And, I never really belonged to any kind of community in general. And I think just coming here and starting this new career as an artist and as a street photographer, I just felt a sense of, everybody has something to say. And whether I go into the black churches or the black rodeos that I've been to, or going to the wrestling communities and where they wear the Berlucci masks and stuff like that. You know, like everybody has some kind of commonness, and I think what's inspiring me so much now, especially where we're at right now in the world, in our communities, everybody's desperate for that kind of connection with each other. And, you know, we're all so separate, but there is so much connection. And I try to portray that in my photography. I don't say, I'm pretty much a basic person when it comes to techniques, although I take a lot of care in how I edit and what's important in that picture that tells the story of how I've interpreted that event. So that's really important to me.
So are you working with, and I'm
This
gonna
is
ask
all
for some
digital.
clarity, because from where I'm sitting,
Yeah,
that's the first one in my
it's-
view. So is
yeah.
that the black and white is
The
what
black
you're
and
talking
white.
about? Okay.
So with that, you know, obviously there's lots and lots of color. And sometimes I love color, but color and sometimes can be really distracting. And, you know, and I think that black and white, it's very powerful. I think it's really powerful when you have, you know, portraits and people and stuff like that, because it really helps you zero in, like when Jeff was talking about how, you know, I'm ADD. We're all ADD in some ways, because
Or ADD-ish.
you can't stop being ADD. But you know, there is this quiet calm when you're behind a camera. And I'm, on the other hand, much more of an extrovert when I do have the camera, because I do like to talk to people about it, because that helps them in some ways relax and, yeah, I'll take a picture with you. What are you doing out on the street, you know? And I don't say, take a picture of you. I just say, oh, what are you doing out on the street, you know, and blah, 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 and then people relax. That picture is totally different, but.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. So because I'm an artist, I can engage this way, and someone else might also, but they might not. But so your choice of doing this black and white, and as soon as you said that, I was thinking like, oh, if that was in color, I would never notice the clown, because the figure in the foreground would steal all the attention, because he's pretty big and he's pretty imposing. And if he was wearing, let's say, anything red or anything bright yellow,
Right.
with the look on his face and how close up you are, my eye would not go to the clown, but because of the contrast.
But he's slightly out of focus, and the people behind him are in
More
focus.
focus. The clown especially.
Yeah, and I had one where he was in focus, razor sharp, and everybody else was kind of blurred out.
So
But
I was
it wasn't as
gonna
interesting
ask,
as the photo.
did you know you were going to do that when you took the photo?
No, but I can feel the moment when I snap, because you know, sometimes when you, especially when you're photographing an event where there's just so much and you're just trying to like absorb everything, you know you got that shot, you know it. When I shot that, I knew I had that shot.
So when you were going into the editing, you said that's like where you really like, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, you try to pull out all the stuff that doesn't really matter. I had a picture of, I went to the Bike Fest in Daytona Beach, or Daytona, and it was like 90 degrees, and I wore these black boots, and I thought, what am I wearing this stuff for? I wanted to blend in, right? So they have these, you know, tents and everything where people do certain things. There was a woman sewing these patches on black leather jackets, because, you know, every time you go to a Daytona, you know, 1980, you have a patch and all this stuff. So she's sitting in there, and she's on an old sewing machine, and she's sewing these patches, and there's patches in the back, and there's a woman off to the side with a cigarette. And it was, propped without the woman with the cigarette, or the cigarette was off. And it made a big difference, like it didn't, that person that was peripheral, that you'd say, well, I was gonna just take that person out, was so important, because then you could tell like how dirty and stinky the place was because of that cigarette. But she was off to the side, she wasn't the main character. So I mean, that's what I really think about when I photograph groups of people, is like, how important is this person in the story to keep or omit? I know
So,
that's, does that,
in the developing process, you can make that decision to keep them in or take them out, or
right, I'm not
like if you want the woman who's sitting with the smoking, can you add her like to wherever you want in any
well, you
photo,
could,
or-
but there's something about documentary that you keep as is. You don't alter, like art photography, like, like your piece or Katie's piece. Not that your piece was your piece, but Katie's piece, for example, you could alter because it was art, it was more art. This is more like documentary. This is almost like, this is news. So you don't.
I like that.
alter.
See, that part sounds like really interesting to me. Like, oh, you're documenting, and you're looking for the beauty and the intensity and the contrasts in life,
Right.
and you have like really keen senses when you're out doing your work to catch.
Right.
That's what I'm picking up, kind of. So that could be like a really useful, good way for you to weave a tighter story, to have really, really good impact when you have maybe 20 seconds when somebody pauses by your work,
Right.
looking at it.
I mean, I did
Help them understand your creative process.
Right.
What's important to me is the humanity. I'm documenting humanity. I'm looking for these contrasts. When I'm out in the field, I have these keen senses, and it's like sometimes I know I got the shot.
Right.
You're sharing something that way.
So on the post-production part of it, I basically use Lightroom. All my stuff is digital because I can't wait till film. There's a side of me that just says, I can't wait, I gotta see it now.
It's an ADD thing.
So when I put it on the screen, I basically say, there's two things I do. If I have to use exposure, I adjust the exposure. I generally tone down the highlights. So it's not, and then I lighten the shadows so I can get the detail. And sometimes I don't like to use too much of a sharpening, but I sharpen just a tad. And that's it. That's all I do. And I've started painting some of the photography I did that didn't quite make it as compositions, but would be very interesting as a painting.
What kind of paint? Do you mean using your image for
Yeah.
source material for the
Yeah.
painting, or
No, just-
painting on the image itself?
No, just using this as a source.
Source material.
I project it
Gotcha.
because I don't have the patience to draw it actually by hand on a
Okay.
canvas. I project it and then I paint it and then it becomes something different, but I always change it to black and white because it's more important. The lightness and the darks and the detail is much easier to paint than to try to figure out, okay, I gotta match the screen and I have to patch that. It's up to me to paint it the way I want it to look. That's different than the original. Otherwise, leave it as a photograph.
So now I'm thinking, I first met you knowing you as a painter. So when I learned that you're also a photographer, I was like, oh,
And I do photography longer than painting.
okay. And you're a good painter too. So when you're talking about your paintings, even if you're sharing something about the creative process, the whole theme I'm trying to help everybody kind of like start thinking like, if I used to ask my kids when they came home from school, like, you never ask them like, how was your day? Fine, conversation's over. What would I know what would I never know if you didn't tell me? Yeah, so think, what would I never know if you didn't tell me? So in other words, if you don't tell me, I'll never know, right? So like your process for work, if there's things that I saw, but I don't understand what I'm seeing, if you don't explain to me what I don't know about your work, I'll never know it, and I won't be able to appreciate it. Right? So the same thing with like everybody's work, and I don't know how much time we have at this point, but just like constantly think like, what can I share with this person that if I didn't tell them, they would never know it. So like I would never know that you're using your own photography as source material for your paintings, right? It didn't work as a photograph, but I really loved the idea for painting it, and I had different ways to manipulate the image and use color as part of the impact, but my photography is all black and white. Now you just shared like a whole world of ideas and thoughts with somebody where they can imagine you and the creative process and connect to your work more. And the more they go like, oh, that's how she does it. Oh, I never knew. Right? I mean, that's the whole point of this. It's like, what would someone never know if you did not share that with them? So you could say to your friend, I love that you love my work, and it's okay that it's not your thing for yourself. I appreciate your support though, because your support really means a lot to me. Because when I'm doing what I do you feel vulnerable? Do you feel empowered? How do you feel when you are working with your models? I'm assuming, I didn't ask you, do you work with models or you just go and you kind of have that voyeuristic camera?
Yeah,
So-
I do a little bit of everything. I love working with models. I am veering away from that a bit in my own work. I am drawn to documentary, even though it doesn't really show in this photo in particular, but I spent the weekend with my friends and I was following them around. We were going to gay bars, they were cooking together, and I wanted to document their life. And towards the end of our weekend together, I had a vision in my head of what I wanted to do, and it was shooting against that white wall, using my direct light, so they were casting shadows on each other and kind of projecting their identities to each other. I feel like I'm not a person without photography. I need to create. I'm really itchy without creating. So I need to be vulnerable, I suppose. The vulnerability of photography, I have a very tight relationship, and I suppose that's true with art in general too.
How comfortable do you feel sharing with somebody who just happens upon your work to share that little bit that you just shared?
I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know who I'm talking to, in the sense of I don't know if that person is homophobic in that sense. So, but talking about my process in general, I feel very
Yeah. So, the whole thing about touching onto people's phobias and whatever, I have a large painting in my studio right now, and it's at that gawky, awkward halfway point. The composition is there, all the midtones are there, so it makes it feel like a little ominous and almost a little creepy. It's one of my bubble paintings. And a client of mine was sitting there, she kept looking at it, and I said, so what do you think about it? And she's like, I don't like it. It's not my thing. You're always teaching us to say it's not my thing. So I said, yeah, that's okay. And I asked her, are you comfortable sharing with me what makes you uncomfortable about it? Now, because it's just her and I, and she's a longtime client of mine, and we've shared a lot about life together. She shared with me, she said, sure, but I asked her, would you be comfortable sharing with me if you're comfortable or not comfortable? So that could bridge that gap. Somebody's kind of looking at it and they figure out, oh, you know, it's same sex, like let's say they're uncomfortable. If you're there, you can say like, hey, I'm a photographer for this piece. Do you mind if I ask you a quick question? I'm wondering if there's something that draws you to this, but yet maybe makes you uncomfortable. Are you comfortable enough to talk to me about it? Now, if you're comfortable, the possibility of there being comfortable to meet you there will increase a little bit to a lot. They might say, oh, I'd rather not. You go, that's okay. Thanks for taking a look, right? But it might open up that possibility, right? And then you might be able to learn something from them. They might learn something from you. And then you go on your own way. They don't have to love it. You know, it's just, you offer yourself a little bit more by stepping into that moment of vulnerability, and you grow more from it. You know, maybe they will, maybe they won't. You know, I mean, sometimes something just remains, it's not my thing, or it makes me uncomfortable, and I don't want to talk with you about it because I don't know what your bias is, and they're not going to ask. So, but to open it a little, and then your own comfort level opens a little, which I think feeds the creative process. Because I think our sense of vulnerability feeds directly into how courageous we are as creators. And then the more we can share that with somebody about the community of creators, you know, to demystify so people aren't like, oh, you're one of them. You're an artsy fartsy. You know, it's like, yeah, just bring as much humanity to the conversation as you can and see what you get from it. Sound good?
Yeah.
A little scary?
Yeah.
It's a little scary.
I had a question though. I mean, like, we talk about vulnerabilities. Do you think there's some value in putting yourself in situations that are way out of your comfort zone to feel that, so you can create something maybe differently than something that you would if you were in your comfort zone? Like,
Well, it depends what kind of comfort zone you're talking about. Like if you're talking about physical safety,
well,
like, no. If you're talking about like, I have an emotional bump, doing this just always scared me, so I stay away from it. You know, so I don't know. It's like you were
well,
saying,
like a different scene. I mean, like you're gay and you go to gay bars and stuff. How would you feel about going to a classic car show?
I think it'd be really fun, actually.
Yeah, see, and honestly, I've never been to a gay bar. I'm not gay, but I think it'd be cool to go just to put myself out of my own comfort zone, because, you know, put myself in my comfort zone, I'm gonna take the same stuff I've always shot, you know?
Yeah, it kind of opens you up a little bit more to other possibilities.
I just
Figure out where-
make one comment. I was with my dad and my mom, you know, the last year of their life. They lived forever. They were in their 90s when they passed. But, and I'm not a real caregiver type person. I mean, I'll do anything that I need to do at that moment, but it's not a natural thing. I don't have children. I have a dog that I, you know, relish like crazy, but I'm not a mother. And that year that I spent with both of them, I photographed them. I photographed them laying in their not in their caskets, but you know, in their beds at the last day, and I photographed everybody around it. And I haven't been able to show that to anybody. But I think it would be an interesting show, and that's talking about vulnerability, and that people might not look at it as a piece of art, but it's something like a healing process for anybody that's ever been through that, and having the courage to do that.
Next year's photography show.
Yeah, well, wasn't there a show somewhere on the topic of mourning?
Mhm.
Yeah,
It was a show called Good Morning.
Yeah. Like how to mourn
Yeah.
in a healthy way,
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I'm just talking about comfort zones and
Yeah.
stuff.
So as far as like vulnerability like that, I mean, that's an internal question to ask ourselves. Welcome. We're talking about the creative process and what makes us vulnerable, and learning how to share something about the creative process, and finding comfort in certain levels of vulnerability. And there's always personal growth in the whole thing. Like this painting I have right now, it has more of me, of my sense of uncertainty, which is why the client didn't like it, by the way. I started telling the story, I diverted. So this client, she shared with me, well, I'm uncomfortable with it because there's too many things about it, I don't know what's happening. And she pointed to like everything in my studio, she had hair color on, everything in my studio, like, I love this one, I love this one, I love this one, I love this one. And then she finally said it. She said, I have so much uncertainty in my own life right now that this one makes me uncomfortable. So I asked her, would you like me to cover it while you're here? She said, no, I'm not uncomfortable with it to that degree. Right? So degrees of comfort, degrees of vulnerability, I think it's like, you don't find courage until you've walked through the thing that scares you, but you don't want to compromise actual safety either.
Yeah.
So like if it like triggers an unhealed trauma, tread gently on yourself. You don't have to prove or show anything to anybody. So if you're not ready to openly share those moments with somebody who's not in your inner circle, it may not be time for you to show those photos. On the other hand, you might be ready, but be stuck, and showing them might help you open up and mobilize some of those feelings.
Well,
and
it might be healing for other
solve
people.
something.
That's
Well, it also might be healing for you, if there's healing there that you need.
Oh, I don't need anything.
We don't need
I wanted to ask Jerry a question, because we haven't heard from him yet.
Yeah.
What is something that we don't know about your artwork?
Well,
If you weren't here.
I do
So
color
which is your work?
in here, it's the one with the pilings on the exterior over there.
Okay.
So, what, you don't know about my work?
What would I not know about your creative process if you did not share it with me in this rich opportunity to do so?
I don't like photographing on the kind of days that day was.
You do not?
I don't. That was a day like today, bright, sunny, no clouds. I prefer cloudy, overcast, even rainy days to go out and work in.
So, how do you feel about this one being in the show? And keep in mind, everyone who's not an artist, he submitted that for the show, so.
I like the shot. It's, if I go someplace, I was on a trip and, sometimes you don't get what you want, so you try to make the best of it, and that's what I was doing that day. It's out on Whitefish Point. And I just, walked around out there for a while, took some pictures of some things that I thought might be interesting. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I tried this several different ways, I put the horizon in different areas. I like doing a lot of minimal things, so, sometimes something will come to me just even if I don't like the type of the day, maybe this will work. And I like the way this worked. So,
So even though, what was your your experience as a creator? I mean, just shared a little bit. I'm just gonna ask you to like expand and wrap a little more story around it. So I found it really interesting. You led with describing this is not usually the photography I enjoy doing. And then you told us that you like cloudy overcast or clouds. My mind starts to like wonder about contrast. You know, maybe there's something about contrast there. So maybe you can compare and contrast, like something about, I mean, like, I think that's a very successful image. And your display of it is also very well attended to.
thank you.
So we haven't talked about that yet in here. No matter what type of artwork an artwork presents to people, community, ourselves, how we present it really matters. So like if you put that in a cheap preppy frame without any matting at all, so that feels very nurtured. So how does nurturing your work play into what you do?
If I take the time to take the picture like that, and I want to show it the best I can. I don't want to just put it in just a frame. I want a mat around it. I want a nice not a frame that'll take away from the picture. So for black and whites, I'll use a black basic frame. Sometimes I'll use a white frame also, if I think it works with the picture. But I like to I pay attention to the way I present things.
Yeah, that's really nice. Trying to think like how I can tease something. Do you have any ideas about? I mean, you have your own thoughts about it.
I was just curious, so when you're creating or setting up for a shot like this, is it like how do you take the image? Do you have like a open shutter? Like, is there a long exposure or like?
Yeah, I like long exposure, so even though this was the middle of the day, I kind of put a neutral density filter on it. It wasn't a windy day, it breezy a little bit, there wasn't much light action, but I still like to get it, the water smooth, so I put a neutral density filter, it's probably about a 30-45 second exposure. It didn't need to be real long, because the water was smooth anyway, but maybe some ripples, but I like going out also in the evening, doing long exposures. I'll be out some places, well past sunset, taking pictures if there's good moonlight or something.
So for someone that doesn't know photography, what do you mean by exposure?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, same thing, like, I don't know anything, let's say I literally know nothing about photography, I just have it in. So what's tell me more about like a long exposure, a short exposure, a filter, or not a filter.
If you're doing, say waterfalls or something, you see the real milky, sometimes water flowing, that'll be a longer exposure rather than, photography, there are fractions of a second, a lot of exposures where, I deal with a lot of times in several seconds up to minutes, to get, maybe a certain effect that I'm looking for in the photograph. With this, like I said, that's probably about a 30-40 second exposure, just to kind of smooth water out. If there were clouds in there, I'd want to get maybe, if they were blowing a little bit, I'd want, kind of silky looking, smooth out.
So the exposure basically is how much exposure to the light. So the longer exposure means more light than me. But sometimes you want that, it also very slow shutter speed or something, but that is you mentioned the neutral density filter. That is actually almost like putting sunglasses on, so you don't get the brightness, and you can use a longer exposure.
So softening your image, those are things, mechanics and tools that you can use to soften the image. So you have this softer everything. So there are clouds. The clouds would be very soft. The way you describe water, if you do longer exposure
Keeps motion.
versus shorter exposure.
If you didn't do a long exposure, what would that image look like? Would you see the waves and like more with the environment?
It would, if it was wavier, along those pilings there, it would look, the water would be, more, you'd see blur around there. The pilings wouldn't be quite sharp, up to a point.
You can shut this on a tripod.
Yeah.
So if you're shooting on a tripod, whatever's fixed in the scene,
Becomes
Sharp.
sharper.
not sharper, but sharp,
Okay.
remain sharp. Everything that's moving will now create more of a blur, so you get the contrast.
So you set out knowing that that's how you want to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, so, I knew, well, it wasn't the data I was looking for, but, like I said, I was out there and I didn't want to go away without anything, so sometimes that does happen too, but I was able to get this and maybe one other shot out of, I don't know how many I took, but I think sometimes when you're happy with one, photography is that way.
It's interesting because by looking at that, I wouldn't have thought that that was a sunny, bright day. I would have thought it was like an overcast, like today. Well,
Yeah.
not today.
Well,
Those clouds are
overcast but sunny still.
Yeah, like, so I think you still were able to bring what you prefer.
Yeah, well,
With
it's,
what-
with black and white too, you got a lot of freedom to manipulate the image a little bit too. I kind of, darkened the sky, gave it a bit of a vignette around there. Just give it a little bit more mood. If you saw just a raw image of it, you never would have, looks nothing like that. So you try to work, give it some feel, feeling, mood to it.
Because I think, at least for me as a photographer, when I'm talking with people that aren't photographers, the misconception is the amount of time it takes to take a photograph and then afterwards, and I try to, some of my images I do take with my phone, but it is a set intention of what I want to capture. Instead of I'm just running around and taking random pictures, like there's something that I want to feel accomplished with what I'm photographing. So I try to, if that conversation does come up with someone, I try to explain it's not just a very simple activity. It takes, you might be sitting out on the beach waiting for, a cloud to come over the sun,
Yep.
and you're there for hours
Yep.
for a 30-second exposure, and then you go and edit it, and then that takes time too. So it almost takes, depending on what you're trying to do, probably equivalent to painting, depending on
Yeah.
the
Right.
painting.
Well, you take, actually, I think about some photos I've thought about for years, not just minutes. Or I would come back to a place, I have to be back here at this time of day, this time of the year, because the sun is here and the moon is there, whatever. I mean, there's some that you look forward, this picture, I look forward to several years ago for the eclipse. I knew when it was happening. So how was I going to shoot it? So I thought about it a lot. And then how am I going to display it? And then another thing you mentioned, that not just on the display, I spend considerable thought in what substrate I'm putting that image on. Whether I'm putting it on metal, whether I'm putting it on acrylic, whether it's canvas, that gives a whole different quality to the image. So there's a lot of thought, or maybe what kind of lens I want to shoot it with. All these factors, I didn't realize, they're very different. I mean, I was more of a painter and sculptor, That was more my upbringing. And then I got into photography afterwards, but I still think, in fact, people who know me in a different life, but you don't paint anymore. And I said, yes, I do. I just don't paint with pigment. I paint with pixels. And that's how a lot of my shots, I think about it. That anticipation, I liked what you said about back from the film days. And I used to do the darkroom thing and all that kind of stuff. I still do that because I don't really take pictures a lot of times. I collect data. And those pictures help create my image. So did I collect the right data? So I'm kind of excited. I don't really get to see all that. And a lot of times, it's like even today, because of the light behind you, to take this picture, I actually took 5 images, multiple exposures, like in a fraction of a second. I'll put it together so I can blend the exposures. So there's a lot of other
It would be
thoughts.
dark and
Yeah.
bright, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice you do that.
So what about,
He's good.
so if you take pictures of people and you're documenting people on the street and you're using it for commercial purposes, do you need to get people to sign anything saying it's okay to use my recognizable
Well, there's some-
image?
It's, in public places, it's sort of iffy. I haven't sold any of those images as for commercial purposes. It's been, my personal art collection. And, I have a book that I made here that's in the back with the same cover. And it's all of the events I've been through in Detroit, all the evolutions of different groups that have formed or dispersed. And, they're over years. So, I suppose if I was going to, sell it,
Well, it's
Yeah,
here,
it
and
kind of
the
has to-
potential of it selling is increased than if it's in your closet at home.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
legally, if
Yeah.
you're in a public space, you are vulnerable to have your picture taken. I mean, especially when it gets into kids and things, I always ask, sometimes I'll shoot first, but I'll ask the parent or someone with them. And sometimes I'll just delete it. Sometimes they'll give me their email to send them the picture. Oh, I want it.
Sure.
But if it's for art,
Yeah.
we can take it. If it's for, I shoot for several publications. So those publications, I can use those. Now those are they have to be very accurate. I can't take things out and add them and have to be much more as it was. Journalistic. But there's other things that, if it's for commercial purposes, I want a competition. Immediately, when they publish this online, I was contacted like within a couple of days from a marketing company. They wanted to buy that picture. Unfortunately, I took that picture and did not get, I got permission from the dad right there, but I don't have anything signed or
Right.
so
So the pictures
I
you
couldn't
just
use
took of him, if you do something really fantastic
I'll
with
sign
it,
him out over this.
and you put it in a show, and you walk past the photo, and you're like, that's me, is that become a legal issue or a moral issue?
if it's in a show,
Yeah.
it holds up pretty well. Some things have actually gone to a couple of situations have already gone to the Supreme Court.
We are going to start wrapping up. Is there anything that any of my photographers want to share on that creative process that we don't know yet? I know Eric, we didn't really get a chance to speak here, but you might not want to either.
I can take a minute and share. My piece is the still life, black and white still life. The large one on the wall there. I work exclusively now in large format, 4" by 5" black and white film. That's a studio shot. Most of my work is still lifes that consist of some combination of man-made objects and organic objects. And that's from a series where I was emphasizing shadows. But what I want to do with the work, because it's a still life, but it's abstract, is to challenge the viewer to figure out what story is being told. So I'll turn it back on you. What story is being told
Right.
in that piece? What's going on there?
I mean, that is an important thing to be aware of as an artist anytime. You know, what's my intention?
What is the narrative that goes with that?
Yeah. I mean, in a way, because you have like a tool here that could, like cut this pepper up. I happen to, I mean, it does make me stop and think. Can I say why it makes me stop and think? The juxtaposition of something natural with something man-made, I think is always interesting. You have a good eye for composition. So the composition itself implies a story. I think whether you don't have a story there or not, you just had these things and got curious. So maybe that's the story. I just got curious how these items would interact with each other in a black and white format. And I think our intention of like, what do we want the viewer to feel is something that as artists, we a lot of times don't want to put much energy into it. And sometimes we don't need to, because I think there's, with that intentionality, there's a certain amount of intuitiveness in placing those objects. Are you responding intuitively or intellectually while you're doing that, setting it up? It's a combination of the items that you're using, the placement of the items, the lighting, and the angle that you take your photo from.
Yeah, there's not a set story behind it, but the placement of the objects is intentional.
I just wanted, every time I see Eric's work, I mean, I love his work, and I was like, wow, it's technically wonderful. But I look at that and I think, what's the metaphor behind that? That composition? What are you really trying to tell about the world, or how you see the world in a certain way? Is it aggressive? Is it passive? That's what I think. I don't know what the answer is.
Well, I mean,
The
I think
answer
you're
is
being,
whatever you think it is.
yeah.
Right.
For you personally.
So is that your intention? Is it like, are you considering it as an abstract? Or, I mean, you mentioned that you're placing man-made objects with something made from nature, so that's deliberate. Is there a metaphor that you have in mind, and you're just hoping to see like it resonates the same way with other people? Or are you genuinely asking me?
Genuinely asking.
Okay.
Because I generally don't have a metaphor in mind other than in the series where there's a combination of man-made and organic, that there's a combination of man-made and organic. I have other works that are just man-made or just organic.
But do you
In
think about
combination.
things, you think about the end product differently than when you were setting it up? It's like, wow, I didn't see this. It was unconscious. Your unconscious brought something out.
When I select the photographs to print, that's part of it, is do I see something potentially
It's like
interesting
joy
in
after
the
you see
viewer?
it.
Yeah. Because there are some compositions I look at and go, doesn't do anything for me, and goes off and don't get printed.
So one of the like my emotional response to it, well, when I went closer to it to experience it more, it was kind of, brought me to like a curious contemplation. Would I have felt that had you not asked me? I don't know. Because I didn't get here on time to walk the show before, so I can't do a compare and contrast. But there is something in that that's very peaceful, because your man-made object is very grounded, and then there's something kind of curious. And I don't know, it's like, do you always have to know what the story is? I mean, you respond to the emotional sense of it yourself as you're setting it up. So it's like something that appeals to you, and you're saying you're not sure why it appeals to you, or what the story.
No, different setups have different possibilities. I mean, in the work, some of the man-made objects are very stable and grounded, iron. I've got some rusty casters that are similar. Some of the organic objects are curious. You know, the pepper with the bent stem, it looks different depending how you orient it, how it interacts with the other objects.
Yeah, the stem is, you have repetitive shapes with the stem and the handle.
I mentioned to you the other day that I like that picture. And a lot of, excuse me, what I see, yes, it's very peaceful on one hand, but it has a lot of movement in it.
Yeah.
The eye, it draws the eye around the picture a lot.
Well, it's successful composition.
Successful composition, and I think the name was something like Playing with Shadows or
Shadow play.
Shadow play?
That's the series of shadow play.
Which is an activity. Playing is, and I see that there's motion there. Now it's interesting, like I know a lot of your work, and I love, one of the things I often like about you is the motion that is in it. This is a different way of showing motion. Because it allows the eye to move around and play, kind of gives you that feeling. So, but it's just creating, just with objects, but creating a feeling and such.
Yeah, so I mean, if your story is you have an interest in how shadows interact with light, I mean, that in itself, and then the objects you choose in your composition and how you place them really do become kind of like an abstract, and it's like whatever feeling sense you have inside of you is what you're going to translate that with. So your title, Shadow Play, you know, I think that really is your story about it. Like, I love playing with contrast and shadows and lines, and the composition is all very important. Overall, I like to create this type of feeling. About batting, and I know your photography work, of your own work, and anybody who's sitting in this room who doesn't know that, well, you're all photographers, so it doesn't apply to you, forget it. But if you have artist friends and you don't like to photograph artwork for your painter friends or potters or so, whatever, Eric is fantastic that way, but you all, it doesn't matter here. But,
We're all artists.
but if I took your body of work as an artist and lined it all up, I'm sure, at least like with your shadow series, I'm sure it all has a commonality of a feeling type, which leads me to, like, there's another time I brought up in an artist talk, everything we do as an artist is always a self-portrait. So there's going to be something about your personality that shows up in all your work that you do. So if you're working black and white and you're working with shadows, there's going to be something that is very, very, very unique to who you are, because you're the one who's making that. And your sensibilities are part of that now.
Does that go back, you talk quite a bit about being comfortable and such.
About what, sorry?
Comfort, and being comfortable with what we're doing.
Or
And in
I mean,
situations and stuff. But I often like to come, that would make it more of a self-portrait. However, I go out of my way, not really to be uncomfortable, but to look at things totally different. So they're not the same. Some could be very technical, some could be not so much. I do abstracts, I do all kinds of, I mean, the difference between that picture and that picture is quite a different style.
You know what, it's probably a good point to conclude, because I think we're out of time, but I will tell you straight out, your work is always recognizable, whether you're in the room or not, so there's something about you and your work and how you present and what catches your eye and how you use color, how you use your topic, and how you present your topic against a background that is always constant. Prove me wrong.
And then I do wanna, gallery's open till 5, so I do welcome everyone, now that we've engaged in this conversation, to go back through the show and see if photography actually, you look at it a little differently, or if you start thinking of dialogue, even with other artists' pieces, and like trying to think of their intent or what you like or what you don't like and why you might not like it, and then that way, start practicing. Chrissy. And I want to thank Cheryl for being here, and thank you for inviting me to guide the conversation.